Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Tuesday, May 26th, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive, bringing you the latest and relevant news stories like no one else is. And let's cut to the chase today. We've got lots to talk about, lots to delve into on this Tuesday. First of all, I hope everyone had a blessed Memorial Day and took the time yesterday to really be grateful and thankful to those that had served our nation in uniform and are now since deceased. And if you missed yesterday's Memorial Day monologue, I implore everybody to go back and listen to it. It was very, very good. And I got a lot of praise for it too, by the way. So I'm very happy that everybody enjoyed that. But I want to bring everyone's attention to the disgraceful mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, to begin today's program, whose indecent comments yesterday were even dumber than he is. This is straight out of Fox News. You're never going to believe this. He went to X and he wrote, "Today we remember George Floyd, who was murdered by a former Minneapolis police officer 6 years ago. That moment changed our city forever." And I had to sit back for a second and say, okay, change your city forever? How did it do that, Mr. Frey? Well, because you allowed the riots and violence to take place and you did absolutely nothing about it. You let the city burn to the ground. Tim Walz, let the city burn to the ground. That's why that took place. This case wasn't about a cop killing somebody because I don't believe that Derek Chauvin killed him. I'll explain why in just a moment. But the fact that the leadership at the time was so callous to allow this to get so out of control, in which, of course, across the nation we saw very similar, I'd say, riots. I wouldn't even say these were protests. We know, for example, especially on the left-wing news media, well, it's mostly peaceful. And, of course, the background is, engulfed in flames. Everything's destroyed. They weren't peaceful protests. They weren't even protests. These were violent riots. They were looting. There were 35 people killed all across the country in these violent riots because the Democrats allowed it to happen right at the onset of the COVID pandemic. All coming together like a perfect movie, right, folks? Absolutely. Now, Frey went on and added that the death of Floyd forced the city to confront painful truths about race, policing, inequality, and trust, and demanded hard conversations and accountability be had. Since Floyd's murder, our city has been challenged, not just to say we've changed, but to prove it. How the hell have you changed, Mr. Frey? Can you provide any evidence your city has grown up and matured, or things have gotten better in your city? We are committed to honoring this place both as a memorial, with global significance, and as a neighborhood where people live, work, gather, and heal. Wow, so prophetic, Mr. Frey, so prophetic. What would this schmuck be doing if he wasn't the mayor of Minneapolis? I call him Jacob Frey and Shake because I think that's what he'd be doing right now. I don't see any honor whatsoever with this man that he totally glosses over Memorial Day to honor George Floyd, a career criminal who OD'd while he was being detained by police officers. Don't believe me? Go look at the toxicology report. Go look at the toxicology report. He had several different drugs in his system. He had arteriosclerosis, the hardening of the arteries. And he took the drugs right before because they found the drugs in his automobile. And by the way, I want to say something else about this too, because this gets overlooked. It's never mentioned before. The medical examiner who testified at the trial said if they found George Floyd, for example, in his home, the cause of death wouldn't be strangulation, which again, everyone's saying Chauvin strangled him with his knee, using a method, of course, that is routinely used by police officers all across the country and the world, by the way. And if that wasn't, that would have been brought up during the case. Why would your knee be on his neck if that's not a proper police protocol? That's what I would ask, right? Wouldn't you? And by the way, someone please explain to me how you strangle somebody from the side of their neck. Does anyone want to figure that one out? I mean, we could use basic biology, folks. If you're going to strangle somebody, you wouldn't just push it on one side of their neck. Just thought I'd bring that up too. When George Floyd was stopped by the police for passing around a counterfeit $20 bill, okay, it seems harmless, fine. But he was given the opportunity to take the $20 bill back and pay for what he purchased with other currency. And Floyd refused. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. The police were called, and then, of course, we know he ingested the drugs that he had in his vehicle. They found drugs in the vehicle afterwards. And when they were taking everyone else that he was with out of the vehicle, they said, he's acting strange. Is he on something? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if they had said, yes, he just engulfed all these drugs, I don't know. Maybe the response would have been different. Obviously, when you're ODing and saying, I can't breathe, when the cops knock on the glass, something's happening to him. Obviously, he took too much of what he had, and that was in his system. And that was found in his system, too. And by the way, folks, let me be, again, very clear. I want to be clear with you. If you're speaking, you're not being strangled. I know that sounds difficult to hear. Because you're saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Well, again, if you're speaking, you're not being strangled. Now, I'm not saying having a knee on your neck when you're having a heart attack or whatever was occurring in his system is good. Obviously not. But the idea that the cops just threw Floyd on the ground because they wanted to kill him when they were trying to get him in the vehicle and he refused, he asked to be put on the pavement. I mean, it just is so ridiculous to even surmise that. But this is where we are, and of course, Chauvin and the other 3 officers took the fall for this. And it turned into a big scandal. Of course, defund the police took off, and all the riots that took place, and the destruction of the country, especially in the Democrat-run cities in the blue states, primarily. And it was this demonstration that the police are bad. And of course, racism in America is alive more than ever, even though there was no evidence that anything was taking place because of George Floyd's race. And Jacob Fry has the nerve on Memorial Day to glorify George Floyd, who, again, has a plenty long rap sheet. I'm not saying that he deserved to die by any means, but George Floyd died because of what George Floyd did. It would have been any different if you put him in the backseat of the police car. It wouldn't change a damn thing. Because I don't believe a knee on the neck is going to cause strangulation. It doesn't. I'm sorry. If you're talking, you're obviously breathing. Obviously, the blood flow on the other side of the neck is still fine. And by the way, a knee on the neck, they determined before, there was no bruising to the region, which would have been required if strangulation or there was tissue damage. There was none of that. There was none of that. Now, I know it looks bad when you look at that. You see a man saying, I can't breathe, on a cop's knee on his neck, and he later dies. I'm not happy that the man died. Don't misunderstand me. But the idea that we threw the police officers under the bus in this situation to foment this violent summer of riots all across the country during the COVID pandemic. So it was okay to go out and riot. Remember, it was all noble to go and do that. You couldn't go to work, but you can go riot in the streets. You can destroy businesses. You could find bricks that were carefully placed on pallets in many metropolitan cities to, throw in businesses, loot them, set them on fire, what have you. Attack people, that's okay too. That's fine. Don't worry about that. But you couldn't go to work. Yeah, you couldn't go to school either, by the way. So I find Jacob Fry to be a disgusting person. Obviously, the way he handled what took place earlier this year with the ICE officials in their city when he refused to allow his police to do their own job, which was to control the crowds, not allow the crowds to go up to the ICE officers and accost them. Probably could have changed a lot in his city. So I don't think they've learned anything because they have zero leadership in Jacob Fry. And that's all I really want to say on this. How do you take Memorial Day to honor George Floyd, though? That's amazing to me. I really don't understand this, folks. I really don't understand this. This man is awful. He is a disgrace. And his leadership shows because the city is still in massive turmoil still. People think they can go out and again attack police officers. That's okay. That's fine. Yeah, his city changed all right. It changed for the worse, not for the better. And as a result, folks, I have really nothing more I could say about Jacob Fry other than that he is absolutely pathetic. And yesterday was a day to remember our veterans who have since passed. Not to honor a drug addict. Again, I hate to tell you it is how it is, but that's the truth, folks. This is the truth of the matter. He and the Democrats decided to glorify a drug addict who OD'd in police custody. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And on another note, we must move on now to another major story, obviously, that took place yesterday after I ended yesterday's show. And I hate being right sometimes. I got to be honest with you. Sometimes I hate being right. Because I wanted the peace negotiations to go through, the talks to happen, the end of this war to occur. And what do we see yesterday evening? We see that we've decided, Donald Trump has decided now, to conduct self-defensive strikes in southern Iran, against targets including boats attempting to lay mines and missile launch sites. This is what CENTCOM said yesterday. It said the strikes were designed to protect our troops from threats posed by the Iranian forces. So let me understand this. Iran didn't strike anybody. Iran didn't strike our ships. Iran didn't sink any ships. Iran didn't say we're going to attack your ships. Yet we're carrying out self-defense strikes. Someone explain that to me again. Isn't self-defense when you're being attacked? It seems like we're on the offensive, not on the defensive. Well, I'll just throw it out to you to understand that. It says here that U.S. Central Command continues to defend our forces while using restraint during the ongoing ceasefire, which, by the way, Iran has said is what took place yesterday is a major violation of that ceasefire. And, of course, this will now hinder the negotiations moving forward. The attack took place south of Larak Island in the Strait of Hormuz, with several Iranian personnel being killed. Iran's own state-run Nour News reported, without providing further details. President Trump had earlier said negotiations with Iran over the agreement to extend their ceasefire and reopen the strait were proceeding nicely. So how could things be proceeding nicely if we're now using self-defense and now striking these targets? Can anyone explain that to me, how those two things can coexist with each other? Either you're in negotiations and you're getting what you want, or the negotiations aren't going your way, and you decide to provoke them yet again. That seems to be the situation. Donald Trump cannot be trusted, folks. I know some of you don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear things like that. But that's the truth of the matter, and I'm only going to tell you the truth. Donald Trump says one thing, proceeding nicely, everyone gets excited, the markets react, they get better. We're seeing the price of oil now go up as a result of these strikes, too, by the way. Again, probably what President Trump wanted. It's all rhetoric. The Russians don't trust him. The Iranians don't trust him. The Chinese do not trust him. How could anyone take this man at his word? When you say, well, I'm in negotiations, everything's going well, we're looking at these provisions by the Iranians, things are moving forward. By the way, let's go ahead and strike some of these boats in the Persian Gulf right now. That sounds good. Let's kill some of your personnel. That doesn't sound like a ceasefire, does it, folks? Of course it's not, because it isn't. So this is either a sign of the United States talks falling apart once again, which again, I believe is true. I told you that yesterday. I don't think these talks will be moving forward. Or there was some last-minute leverage by Washington and the Israelis that are now in these emerging reports saying that the U.S. and the Israeli jets that I told you had left. Actually, I didn't tell you that on Friday because it took place after the show. But yeah, there was U.S. and Israeli jets. There was some... They were Israeli jets heading east in the Middle East. So that told me something is probably going to happen. So either there's a reconnaissance protocol to see what they were going to do. Probably what took place on Friday evening. And there were some... What were they? I believe they were some refueling jets that also left from the Middle East. U.S. refueling jets as well. So this tells me they were doing recon over the region probably and decided exactly what they were going to do. Notice that Iran closed up their airspace in the western part of the country over the weekend until Monday. And what do we find out yesterday? Of course, now the strikes had occurred inside the Persian Gulf. So, I wish I had something better to tell you. But it appears that the U.S. and Israeli jets, they targeted these Iranian vessels inside the Strait in the late night hours inside of Iran. Look, it's unbelievable. It really is. Now, the few of the details have been confirmed, but the IRGC channels say as followed. These unofficial channels say that the fighter jets attacked 2 boats in the port of Bandar Abbas, killing 4 different people. Earlier reports were reporting of explosions being heard in the same area, and reports of a missile had being targeted the runway of the Bandar Abbas airport. So, the U.S. is going back to the attacks. They're continuing to strike slowly but surely. I told you this is going to happen. I said, folks, to you yesterday, this is not over. There will be attacks yet again. And what did we see yesterday afternoon? The attacks have likely resumed, and of course the war will continue on as planned. There's a couple reasons for this, though. Number one, Iran and what they want. Iran is not capitulating to the United States and their demands. So, understanding this, we've got to ask ourselves the question, what does Trump do? How does he get out of this? Netanyahu isn't going to allow this to happen. We saw the likes of the cheerleaders for Israel, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, complaining about the way that the talks were going. Of course, they can't have this. They are Israel firsters, and that's what they want. So I find it funny, President Trump said recently that he tells Netanyahu what to do, and Netanyahu's a great guy, and he follows everything he says. Okay, then tell him to stop the war in Lebanon. How about that? Let's start with that first. Get out of Lebanon. That's not beneficial to the United States. Or Israel, by the way. So let's tell them to get out of there. Let's stop the ethnic cleansing south of the Litani River. Stop killing people in the suburbs of Beirut. Let's stop this. But they're not going to stop this because they are going to do what they want to do. And they don't want this negotiation to go forward with the United States and Iran either. What would take place if that were to occur? Let's go through that list again. We know that they want the sanctions to be lifted. I don't think anyone in the U.S. is going to allow that to happen. That would have to go through Congress too, by the way. I don't think they have the means to do it because we know AIPAC has a strong grip on all of them. Probably not going to happen. The Iranians said before they make any type of negotiation with any nuclear weapons deal, that all these things have to be met first. So, the sanctions have to be lifted. The war in Lebanon has to end. Not going to happen. Netanyahu's not going to allow it. This is Netanyahu's only way to stay in power, too, by the way. The war itself keeps him in power. That's why Trump's like, well, he's a wartime prime minister. Well, there we go. Great guy. 99%. Trump is 99%, favorable in Israel. He might go run for prime minister after this, he says. Just what I want to hear an American president say. It's unbelievable. They also want to have the unfreezing of their assets, of the prior weapons purchases, rather, under the previous Shah in 1978. So what took place? Iran used to be one of the biggest purchasers of American weaponry, munitions, if you will. And in 1978, the Shah purchased billions of dollars worth of weaponry. We know then, of course, that the 1979 Iranian Revolution occurred. The Shah was relinquished of his crown, and he fled to the United States, and the United States still held on to that money. Well, the Iranians want that money back. So is Trump really going to hand over billions of dollars of Iranian money? Something tells me probably not. Just a hunch, folks, that he probably isn't going to happen. But they want this, and they said this is to get us to the table to talk about nuclear weapons. Again, I don't see Trump agreeing to any of this, by the way, because the Iranians don't have to capitulate. The Iranians have not lost this war. The government is still intact, which, again, Trump wants desperately to have regime change. It's not going to happen. They could say, well, we're talking to the third, the fourth round of the government. We don't even know who's in charge. Well, it doesn't matter. The same government is still intact. The same president is there. The same foreign minister is there. Much of their parliament is obviously still there. Much of the IRGC is still there. So you haven't had regime change. You haven't had the uprising by the people because the people don't want that, by and large. Now, one of the other things that the Iranians have said that will take place moving forward, this is on their list of demands. They say that Iran will now control the Strait of Hormuz for the foreseeable future, despite Marco Rubio saying Hormuz will be open one way or another. Well, let me tell you something. How does the Secretary of State, how does our National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, the great Marco Rubio, not know that any ship that wants to pass can pass. They just have to coordinate through the Persian Gulf. I think, what is it? The Persian Gulf Strait Authority is what they're calling it now. They register. They can do it online, these ships. These companies can go online. They can coordinate with the Iranian government. They will pay the $2 million service charge or toll or fee or whatever you want to call it. And that ship will be escorted through the Strait of Hormuz to proceed on to where it needs to go. Any ship can do this right now, and by the way. So it's not closed. It's closed off to the ships that are refusing to do this. So when Rubio says it's going to be closed or it's going to be open, one way or the other, well, if it's already open. And they are controlling it, by the way. And I got a report too earlier. I have to laugh at these things. Some of these headlines are hilarious. They're saying that the United States is guiding ships through the Strait of Hormuz. No, they're not. Didn't even work during Project Freedom. It's going to work now all of a sudden? Of course it isn't. By the way, they were just laying new mines now? And now you're going to send ships through when you have no idea where they are? Even the Iranians don't know where all of them are, too, by the way. Just want to be clear on that. So how are you going to escort these ships through the strait? How are we going to get our ships in there? When the last time we tried this, our ships approached, and they told us to turn around, and they ended up turning around. So again, we see these headlines. It sounds like things are moving forward. Then again, we revert back to where we are. What ships have we allowed to come through? Can anyone give me any of the names of these ships? Nobody can, because it doesn't happen. So there we are. And again, Trump can't accept any of these positions because, again, it's going to strengthen Iran as a power and, of course, as a foe in the region. Of course, against Israel primarily, which Israel does not want. That's why they wanted this war in the first place, to take Iran out. And again, who, by the way, Israel's not going to stop their war in southern Lebanon. It's just not going to happen. So we have to brace ourselves. This is going to continue on for quite some time. Yeah, this is fresh out of Reuters, too. It says Iran has said that the strikes are a violation of the ceasefire. Yeah, of course. Iran's going to view this as an altercation in the fight. And what do you think? They're going to come to the table and say, yes, Mr. Trump, we're not going to take any of the money that is our money. You can have it. Thank you so much, even though it's been ours. And it's always been ours. And you froze that some 48 years ago. We'll open up the Strait of Hormuz. Don't worry about it. Yes, yes, yes. You have whatever you want. In fact, take all of our enriched uranium, too. I don't think they're even going to give that up even to China, which I've seen in reports as of late, too. I don't see them giving up any of this because they don't have to do that. Now, somebody say, well, Joyce, how are they not going to do that? The war's going to go on? Yeah, the war's going to go on. The war will resume in an all-out war very, very soon. These little provocations sold to you as self-defense will obviously cease, and then the war will go on. It's going to be very, very bad for the Gulf Arab states, too, by the way. They're going to be hit very, very hard when it does happen. And yes, there will be oil shortages. 31% of the global oil supply will be choked off completely, except for what comes out of Iran. That will take place, folks. Make no mistake about it. That is already taking place right now as I talk to you right now. The fertilizer, 35% of the world's fertilizer will no longer be coming out of the Persian Gulf. Good luck during crop season, American farmers, and of course around the world. Good luck getting things like aluminum and helium, which again are very important to our AI technology, folks. What are we going to do then? We haven't thought this through, and that's the biggest problem with all this. I want to see this end, just like everybody else does. But the idea that we're going to keep prodding the Iranians and not actually have meaningful negotiations, which I think right now, President Trump is the only one capable of doing it. But again, he's not doing it. Probably because he's being told by the people around him, you can do it, Mr. Trump. You just got to hold out on them. They're real close to having their economy full. We've done this to them for quite some time now, destroying their currency, sanctions on their economy. They're used to this. And with the Belt and Road Initiative, with the transportation routes into Pakistan, and of course to Russia to the north, they have other means in which they can get around the so-called naval blockade outside of the Persian Gulf. It's not going to stop them. It's not going to deter them. Any ships that come through are paying them $2 million right then and there. We know that their central bank can print out currency and pay the IRGC, so it's not falling down like you're being told. And I'm probably one of the few people telling you this, but I tell you the truth. That's why we haven't seen the Iranians fall, folks. If they were going to fall, they would have fallen by now. They're in this till the end. They know this is it for them as a civilization. And they're not just going to go quietly into the night. Just thought I'd share that with you, folks. Just thought I'd share that with you. And what's interesting, too, by the way, I find this, again, remarkable. President Trump now is putting any peace agreement with Iran on Arab nations now recognizing Israel. I touched base with you on this yesterday. But he touched at Truth Social on Monday, and Trump said that he had spoken with the leaders of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, which is Turkey. We call it Turkey now for some reason. I don't know why. Egypt, Jordan, and Bahrain over the weekend, and that he wanted them to sign on to the Abraham Accords. A historic set of agreements brokered in 2020 that normalized diplomatic relations between Israel and several Arab countries. Now, on the face of it, by the way, when this was happening, I was cheering it, by the way, because I like peace. I want peace. I like formal agreements, establishing peace, and rapprochement, and what have you. I think we all could agree on that. That's great. But we're not seeing that end being held up by the United States and the Board of Peace, in which it says it exists, with Netanyahu sitting on that board, by the way, when they're waging war against Lebanon, the West Bank, and Gaza right now. How could these Arab countries sign on to that? Again, I get the goal of the Abraham Accords, promoting peace and security, prosperity in the Middle East. Great. Love it. When are we going to start seeing that from the Israelis? Why would the Saudis, who again are very much aware of Greater Israel, I don't make this stuff up, that this is a project. You can look it up right now if you like, if you don't believe me. Look up Greater Israel Project. Look at the map of the areas in which they would like to seize land for Israel. It stretches all the way from the Nile to the Euphrates, ladies and gentlemen. Are these countries stupid? Do they not think that at some point down the road there will be problems? And that they can cook up whatever reason they want for this war so long as the United States goes along with them? What's the reason they're in Lebanon right now? To fight off Hezbollah. Why does Hezbollah exist? Go look and see what happened in 1978. Go look and see what happens when Israel invades southern Lebanon. Who formed in 1982? It was Hezbollah, to kick them out of the country. That's why they exist, because by and large the Lebanese government is, again, kind of like a puppet government bought and paid for by the United States, just like the former Shah of Iran was. All these things take place for a reason. And when you have a puppet government in place that doesn't do what they should do to protect their people, we see what took place with Israel. They invade southern Lebanon. They want to take southern Lebanon. Hezbollah forms as a resistance military, paramilitary group. I'm not saying everything they do is benign or great. I'm not saying that. But their primary goal is to stop the aggression by the Israelis. That's why they exist. That's why they exist. Hezbollah didn't form just to invade Israel, as you've been told. It's the other way around. And without Hezbollah, you would see the takeover of Lebanon. And Netanyahu understands this. His government understands. The Likudniks understand this. And as a result of all this, you have them going up against Israel. Same thing why you see they label them as terrorists and what have you. Same thing with Hamas. Same concept. These groups exist because of Israel's aggression. Not just to invade Israel. In fact, I would implore all of you, find me a time when Hezbollah invaded Israel, just out of nowhere. In other words, they formed just simply to attack Israel. Go ahead and find that for me. Go ahead and find that for me for Hamas too, by the way. You won't find that. These groups form as a resistance to what Israel's doing in the region. Their aggression in the region and what have you. This is why they are there. We've got to come to terms exactly as to why this takes place, folks. Because, again, if we don't understand why these things happen, we fall sucker to the lies in the media that tell us otherwise. Anyways, So let's go back to this Abraham Accord, which, by the way, I told you yesterday, I see this going nowhere. I don't see, for example, Pakistan, who also has territory as part of Greater Israel. Turkey as well, same thing. We've heard Naftali Bennett say Turkey's next after Lebanon. These countries are not stupid. Saudi Arabia, Egypt are on there. Jordan, all of Jordan is a part of Greater Israel, folks. So how do you reconcile with this? How do you come to the table on this? And why is this being brokered during the peace talks with the Iranians? I don't see how this is all going to come together. Is Iran going to force these countries to sign on to the Abraham Accords? Or will they say we won't move forward if these countries don't sign on? I don't understand this. Again, I'm reading this here, and it says, after all the work done by the United States to try and pull this very complex puzzle together, it should be mandatory that all these countries, at a minimum, simultaneously sign on to the Abraham Accords, President Trump said on Truth Social. Those countries discussed are Saudi Arabia, the UAE, already a member, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, and Bahrain. Bahrain and the UAE are already members, so I don't know why he's adding them in there. Morocco, again, is a member as well. Let me just say, I like the diplomacy. I like that part of Trump where he wants to get peace negotiations. But you can't have peace when you have a member of this pack that was just in a 7-front war with its neighboring countries, with what it's doing in Gaza. All these countries know what's going on. Again, they're not stupid. They see exactly what's going on. They hear what the Israeli politicians are saying. They know what's happening in Gaza. They know what's happening in the West Bank. They know what's happening in southern Lebanon. They know what took place in Syria recently. They know why all these things are happening. 7 countries in 5 years. Iran is one of those last countries, but now the list has gotten bigger. Now Greater Israel is in full effect. This is what they want. They want these lands. For whatever reason they want it for, but are these countries going to just fall apart? Only time will tell. But I don't see this really going. I think the original Abraham Accords itself is null and void at this point. I don't see it being anything significant. I do commend President Trump for trying to create peace, but you can't just create peace for some people and not for all people. Obviously, this will be met with resistance. The criticism of what's going on in the Middle East right now, they're failing to address historic tensions. And Trump sees this. Again, if I see this, Trump sees it too. We can look at the Palestinian issue, the bombardment of Gaza, Lebanon right now, the aggression towards Iran, Israel attacking Iran. Israel attacking Iran twice, unprovoked, by the way. And these other Muslim nations have got to see this too. I'm not making this up. This is exactly what takes place. And so, folks, I don't see this going anywhere. If this is a staple for the U.S., then, again, I see the negotiations really falling apart as time moves on. I do want to go over another very important topic, a topic I haven't discussed in great detail in quite some time, unfortunately. I've been focusing more on what's taking place in the Iran war because globally it affects each and every one of us. And we're also in this war, too. So I tend to focus on Iran, but what's taking place in Russia right now is heating up in the spring offensive right now. And what they're saying right now is, this is out of NBC News, abandon the Ukrainian capital or risk being hit in a new and intense wave of attacks. This is the Russian warning now that's being issued to the United States and to countries with diplomats inside of Kiev. And they're urging them to either flee or face what is called a systematic strikes on the Ukrainian capital. So I think what's taking place, I think Putin understands that he's got to end this war. He's dragged this war of aggression on for quite some time now. Excuse me, war of attrition, rather, excuse me. I don't want to misspeak to you. And he understands that if Kiev stands, this war continues on. So in order to finish the war, he's got to take the capital. That's the way it's going to work. And if there are going to be strikes, it seems like this will be an intense campaign against the capital. And will this end the war? That's what I really would like to know. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that he received a personal warning to that effect from his Russian counterpart and offered Washington's renewed mediation in the stalled talks to end the war. So what's going on here is that you have European countries backing Ukraine, largely NATO countries, giving them money, but giving them weapons, giving them aid, giving them intelligence, all these things, by the way. And they're noticing that it's not stopping. And so long as the weapons pour into Ukraine, despite how much the Ukrainian people are suffering and the loss of life their army is taking right now, which again, they're not deterring anything either. What you're seeing, though, I think, is Putin's realization that he's got to end this war. This has been going on for over 4 years. Now, he could cross the Dnieper River, head into Kiev, end this conflict once and for all. Finish it off. Get rid of Zelensky, who should be gone, by the way. By the way, how do those elections go in the country that he was supposed to have, that President Trump prompted him to do? Did they have them yet? I didn't think so. Putin understands the longer he carries this out, again, the more casualties he has on his side, of course, but the attacks on Moscow, for example, that we've seen as of late, residential buildings being attacked by Ukrainian drones, the attack on his residency in, I believe it's called Novgorod, if I'm saying it correctly, forgive me. But he had an assassination attempt on his own life, and he understands exactly who's a part of that. He knows exactly where the drone came from, how they're programmed, and they know that the trail comes through Ukraine, through Germany, to the United States. All this is taking place around. So he understands this. He also understands, too, that the global economy is not doing well, and why drag this war out any longer? Let's end the war, I think, is his position that he's taking right now. He's already taken far too long. This should have been over long ago. And by the way, we could have had peace long ago, too. It could have been ended much, much sooner if it wasn't for Boris Johnson and Joe Biden to allow the Ukrainians to continue on, offering their support. Again, classic World War II type situation. World War II could have ended in 1940, but what took place? Winston Churchill said, no, if we get the United States in, I don't have to capitulate to Germany. I don't have to have a peace negotiation with Germany. I can continue on. And I'll be the winner, I'll be the victor, and I'll be the hero, and all that wonderful stuff. Same thing in World War I. 1916, that war would have been over. We would have never even been involved in it if Great Britain didn't say, we'll get the United States in the war. We'll do that. We'll go that route. And the war lags on. So, folks, we have the same situation here. That's why we're always talking, is this World War III-esque? Because in many ways it reflects that, what's going on. Except today it's mostly during proxies and not this all-out wide war. But I do think Putin will try to end this. I think he sees the end right here. He understands if he takes Kiev, if he demolishes it, which I don't think he's going to demolish the civilian sites. I don't believe that. But I don't think he would, because Putin understands that lots of the Russian Orthodox Church started in Kiev. And I don't think he would target those types of sites, just to be honest with you. So he's not going to demolish the entire city. But what I think he will do, he will try to hit it very hard, and he will have his troops walking in the streets of Kiev soon. And once that takes place, it's over. I think he understands it's over. He should have done this, again, 4 years ago. But he's lagged on, and he hasn't done what he's supposed to, and that's why this war has dragged on as long as it has. And that's all we have on this front, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll see exactly what takes place. We know that the Russian Foreign Ministry said things now get more intense for the Ukrainian capital, adding that the deadly attack on the College of Luhansk has exhausted our patience. That's in the Donbass region. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Tuesday refused to provide details on the frequency of the potential strikes. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, a great diplomat, by the way, raised a new threat in a call with Marco Rubio on Monday, according to the Russian readout, informing the U.S. on behalf of Russian President Vladimir Putin of the impending systemic and sequential strikes on Kiev, reiterating the call for U.S. diplomat staff to evacuate. So this looks like it's going forward. And by the way, when the Russians say they're going to do something, they usually do it. So I hope Rubio will get his people out of there. I hope no innocent people obviously suffer in this. And I just want these wars to end, folks. I just want it to end once and for all. Stop what's going on in Ukraine. Never had to happen. Happened because of our Maidan revolution. That's why this all took place long ago. Thanks, Obama. Thank you, Victoria Nuland. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. This is why we have these situations. And now we look in the Middle East and we see the powder keg going off there yet again, too. We want these wars to end. We want our government to work for us. We want the economy to work for us. This is what we should be striving for. Not for more prolonged wars. And by the way, wasn't President Trump supposed to stop the Ukraine war on day one? I think we're a little bit past that, folks, don't you? I think so, too. How about the war in Gaza? Now, again, we're in a ceasefire in name only. We still know that they're shelling inside of Gaza, killing people, killing innocent people. Yep, this is where we are, folks. This is where we are in 2026. I would have never guessed this, too, by the way. Never would have guessed this. And let's move on to domestic issues now inside the United States. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here, and let's see what's out of Bloomberg right now. It says here that the U.S. Supreme Court refused to let Florida file an unusual lawsuit that accused California and Washington State of making it too easy for undocumented illegal aliens, it says here immigrants, I'll use the proper vernacular here, to get commercial driver's license. Yet giving no explanation today, the justice on Tuesday rejected Florida's bid to sue its fellow states directly in the Supreme Court, as states can do under some circumstances to prevent their sovereign interest. Absolutely, 100%. That's why Ron DeSantis is a great governor. Justice Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito dissented, saying they would have granted Florida's motion to file the complaint. The only two real conservatives sitting on the court today, unfortunately. So what did Florida say? They've argued and alleged unsuccessfully that California and Washington were failing to verify the immigration status of licensed applicants and require them to show English proficiency, as required under federal law to get a commercial driver's license. Florida claimed that it would have implemented a flurry of costly preventative measures to keep its roads safe here. So here's the thing. California said that the lawsuit was based on unfounded assumptions, that the state does not verify legal presence and test for English proficiency. Well, we know this is true. This is 100% true. They gave, when I was in California, I think it was 2014 and 2015, they gave out 1 million IDs to illegal aliens. And rightfully so, the lawsuit blamed California and Washington for the fatal accident caused by an undocumented illegal alien making an illegal U-turn in a 18-wheeler on a Florida highway, killing 3 people. And by the way, we've seen other accidents happen with illegal aliens driving. Florida said that the driver at one point had a California and Washington licenses. Through Washington said that he didn't have a valid license from the state at the time of the crash, but they're getting access to these driver's licenses in these states that have these laid-back laws that allow illegal aliens to receive driver's license, in which, of course, they can go through and they can receive a commercial driver's license, even though their status is illegal. So 100% this is California's fault. I don't think this is... Again, California and Washington bear the brunt of this. This is why you're seeing people like Sean Duffy, for example, in the Department of Transportation, going after these states that are not preventing this from happening, or, again, rescinding these driver's licenses, which they 100% should absolutely do. But here you go. You have a rogue state like California, when Kamala Harris was the then Attorney General, by the way, the leading law enforcement officer in the state. She allowed the DMVs in the state to issue illegal aliens' driver's license. At least 1 million, and probably much more than that since then, too, by the way. So think about that for a second. You can get an illegal driver's license that is really not valid in California. You can go to any other state then. Apply for that driver's license. And by the way, if you're in a state like California, you get a commercial driver's license. Even though you can't read this road signs, you can't speak English, you can't read English. This allows you to go to other states and travel to other states through interstate commerce. And what took place in Florida? 3 people were killed. because the driver either didn't understand or didn't care about the traffic laws. This is where we are now. So how the justices could just turn a blind eye to this is something else to me. I really don't understand this. I mean, do these justices not believe that they drive on the same roads that an illegal alien can? And what happens when that happens? You know, a lot of these politicians, they live in their little bubbles. But none of these people drive on freeways or highways or throughway systems? Of course they do. So they're not immune to this. The catastrophic injuries that people sustain when, an 80,000-pound 18-wheeler crashes into their vehicle. So I'm very, very concerned about all this, folks. I really am. I would have hoped more for, it should have been a 9-0 issue, that they would stop a state from doing something that's illegal, and this is completely illegal. You can't take someone who has no valid driver's license or no way to prove of which they're a citizen or legal immigrant, which is, obviously that's what it is. They can't prove this. So how do our 9 justices not come to that same rational conclusion that illegal aliens should not be able to be permitted to, first of all, get any type of driver's license, let alone driving a commercial driver's license, driving with a commercial driver's license? It doesn't make any sense. Operating an 80,000-pound 18-wheeler. I mean, you want to give me that driver's license? I don't know how to drive. I can read the signs and whatnot, but I can't drive an 18-wheeler. Would you just hand me a commercial driver's license? Of course you wouldn't. You have to show proficiency that you understand how to operate on the roads. Something happened here in California and Washington. And I think a lot of it has to do with their illegal status that allows this. Simply just pushing people through the system. Again, they know exactly what they want to do. And this is vital for them. Absolutely. 100% vital for them. Yep, and again, I'm looking at the article here from last June? Oh, last August, yep. Harjinder Singh, who entered the country illegally and obtained a commercial driver's license in California, has been charged with 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter in connection with Tuesday's fatal crash, says the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. So this affects everybody in the state. When you have a rogue state like California that allows people sanctuary and safety in their state, and these people leave and go to other states and do the exact same thing, this is how you get these problems. So this never had to happen. By the way, I've been seeing this more and more too, with illegal aliens operating these vehicles and killing people. I saw something very similar just a little while ago in Ohio, same thing. It's sad, and it shouldn't be happening right now. You should show proficiency anytime you are operating an 18-wheeler. Complete proficiency, understanding the laws and ways of the streets. That's the way it should be. Always. Always. None of this needed to happen, by the way. And moving on, folks, let's move on. Let me take a look at this article here out of Politico. We're in election season right now, especially the primaries. In Texas's primary elections are today, which is why I wanted to bring up this article for you. And it looks like the John Cornyn and Ken Paxton showdown will end this evening, but the brutal primary has some Republicans worried that the party will emerge in tatters right now. Now, President Trump, as you all know by now, endorsed Ken Paxton, who is the state's attorney general, who's now running for the U.S. Senate. And Paxton has emerged as the clear frontrunner now in the final days of the Texas Senate standoff, where the MAGA-aligned, scandal-plagued, firebrand state attorney general has weathered millions of dollars in attack ads. But it seems John Cornyn, who's the establishment, good old boy in the Beltway, and giant of the Senate, is now seeking his 5th term in the office, is putting up a hard fight until the end, bolstering by the massive war chest and solidarity from senior leadership in Congress. So we have 2 different factions going on right now. And, I find this interesting, too, because we had what took place last week in the state of Kentucky, in Congressional District 4, where Thomas Massie was ousted with AIPAC money and billionaire money. And, of course, President Trump leaning on the other candidate against him, Ed Gellring. But now we're seeing something a little bit different here in Texas. because to me, it appears, obviously, Paxton is the more MAGA line. He's more of the person in his state that follows the law. He was great during the illegal invasion of our southern border in the great state of Texas. And he really went up against the Biden administration following the law. Now, does that mean he's perfect? Of course not. Nobody is. I mean, to me, I would have made him Attorney General. I would have never gone with Pam Bondi. I would have gone with Ken Paxton over Pam Bondi any day of the week. But now it looks like the establishment inside the U.S. Senate is really going forth, and they're trying to keep Corden in because for some reason they don't want a Ken Paxton in Congress. But this is very interesting to me. But the one thing I do know, the one thing I know about all this, in this runoff race here, whoever wins, doesn't matter who it is, they have got to beat James Tellerico, the Democratic nominee. They cannot allow this guy to win, especially in a state like Texas. That would be a major, major blow to what's going on there. And I want to play you a little bit of James Tellerico just to highlight exactly how ridiculous this guy is and to heed my words that someone like this cannot come in as the underdog and take this seat. And I don't think he will. I really don't believe that. There are some polls suggesting he's doing very well. That may be the case for the Democrats. I don't think the state elects a James Tellerico. But this candidate, by the way, if John Cornyn wins or Ken Paxton wins, the general, fine. I mean, that ends up being democracy, right, folks? Okay. But the problem is, would you hand your state over to a Democrat like this in clip one?
The only minority destroying America is the billionaires. Trans people are 1% of the population. Muslims are 1% of the population. Undocumented people are 1% of the population. We are focused on the wrong 1%.
I want to pause for just a minute because what he just said was incorrect. And, he looks as dumb as he looks. He's an idiot, this guy. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. Why is he talking about Muslims and trans people and the billionaires when he's running for Texas Senate? What is he going to do for the state of Texas? I'll tell you what, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Here's the truth of the matter. He is right, though, that 1% of the U.S. identifies as Muslim. That's not incorrect. However, if you look at the Muslim population currently inside the United States, it's much younger on average than the general population. And everyone under the age of 30, 1/3 identify as Muslim. That's a major shift in the demographics, which is the point of this illegal immigration in this country. Or if you're simply just bringing in Muslims to change the demographics of the country. So let's be aware of what's going on here. Now, it is true that 1% also identify as trans. But the schmuck that he is, good old James Tellerico, oh yeah. Only about 0.00027% of the U.S. are billionaires. So he's not even looking at a percent here yet. He's calling it the 1%. Because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He heard Bernie Sanders, billionaires and billionaires. Yeah, he's taking that line. He's running with it. He's like AOC and Gene. Just picture that, okay, if you can. All right. I don't want to warp anyone's imagery here, but, this is exactly what he is. He's taking the playbook and he's suggesting that the billionaires are the only ones destroying the country. I disagree with that. First of all, yes, some of the billionaires are destroying the country. I don't disagree with that statement. But it's the bad decisions of Congress, I think, are much more detrimental to the well-being of our country. The policies in which they make, what they allow, what we saw under the Biden administration, for example. Very, very big problem, if you will. And he's all about that. Remember, he's the guy that just said, what we should see at our southern border is a welcome sign to the entire world. That's exactly what James Tellerico is. He would have opened up every part of Texas to allow everyone and their brother to come in, and he would have no issue about it. That's who James Tellerico is. He would have men in women's sports. That's who James Tellerico is. He wouldn't balance the budget. That's who James Tellerico is. Now, he does say a couple things that are true here. However, he's going about it the wrong way, as most Democrats typically do. Let's continue.
Trans people aren't taking away our health care. Muslims aren't defunding our schools. Immigrants aren't cutting taxes for themselves and their rich friends. It's the billionaires and their puppet politicians. The culture wars are a smokescreen. So many of the divisions in this state and in this country are manufactured by billionaires who want us fighting each other instead of fighting them. They want us looking left and right at our neighbors instead of looking up at them. The biggest divide in our politics is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom.
As Dim Tellerico runs as a Democrat. Fantastic. And he runs with every single Democrat playbook. From open borders to attacking the billionaire class. So I'm sure he would love to tax the hell out of them. Absolutely. And by the way, he's not wrong. Billionaires get a lot of favors from the people they buy off. Look no further than what happened in Thomas Massey's race. Did he speak out against that? Of course he didn't. He's trying to get elected here. Same thing goes with the trans issue. This guy's professed to be a Christian, yet he believes that God is non-binary. This is a guy who's really not sane at all, to be honest with you. But what's he going to do to make Texas better? That's my question. I've never heard him say anything of which he will do anything that will actually make anyone's life better other than his own in the state of Texas. So take that as you will. So this is going to be a very interesting race as it proceeds forward. Whoever wins today, whether it be Ken Paxton, who I would likely choose, or if it's John Cornyn, either way, either one of them has got to beat this nitwit, Dim Tellerico. 100%. Oh, by the way, I want to share this with you before we leave today. This is out of the Gateway Pundit. It says, U.S. Attorney Bill Assaley, who I like a lot, by the way. When he was on the State Assembly, he was fantastic in California. And he's exposing the leftist plot to give illegal aliens taxpayer-funded housing to replace the fleeing citizens of the once great state of California. By the way, I love California, too, by the way. It's a very beautiful state. It's been completely mismanaged by the Democrats who James Tellerico says, hey, it's not left versus right. Well, no, it is. It is. Now, we shouldn't be fighting in the ways we are. I would agree with him on that. But you're divorced from reality, Jim. That's the problem. You're an idiot. You think someone can change their sex when God makes it very clear you cannot. So does biology, by the way. Anyways. But as Assaley said, referring back to his parents who came here legally, took the citizenship test, built a life on their own the right way, he didn't mince any words with his comments about what the state of California does to aid and abet illegal aliens. And I'll play that clip for you right now on clip 2. Let's take a listen to Assaley talk about the scheme of which California uses in Sacramento to ensure their power year after year.
I think one of the most offensive things, my parents are immigrants. They immigrated here lawfully. There's a lot of immigrants in California. The president's wife is an immigrant. And they never mention the word illegal. They always say immigrant community. And I just find that particularly offensive, especially for people like my parents who did it the right way. They came here, they took the citizenship exam. I remember my mom studying for the test and learning about the branches of government, everything. They never want to distinguish between legal and illegal immigrants. And I find that particularly offensive. But you're right. The dirty little secret is they want the flow of illegal immigrants. It fuels, you could talk about it politically, why for census reporting and other reasons, states like California need that population inflow because everyone else is getting out of the state. And then when you go to Sacramento, this is like the protected, oppressed group of the day. And so all their bills every day is like, how do we protect illegal immigrants? How do we get more lawyers for them? How do we get them more services? How do we get them free down payment assistance to buy a home? I'm not joking. That was a bill when I was in Sacramento. They wanted to allow illegal immigrants to access down payment assistance to buy a home. I was like, how do they even get a loan? And apparently you can get a loan with a TIN number, which I found out. But again, people like my mom, she's not getting down payment assistance. She's not getting all these things. She's working.
Yes. I mean, this is so ridiculous. So the program offers qualifying first-time homebuyers shared appreciation, assistance for down payments, and closing costs. Now, to his credit, Gavin Newsom vetoed the bill, citing limited funding because, we're about tens of billions of dollars in the hole right now. Not opposition to the concept, though, itself. So if Gavin Newsom could have, he would have done this. Just keep that very much in mind here. But you have people that are non-citizens. How are they going to qualify for anything? Well, they shouldn't even have legal documentation. How do you apply for a loan without a driver's license? How do you open up a bank account without a driver's license? In proof of which you are a citizen of the United States. That's a question I'd love to see answered. But this is how California works. They make a sanctuary policy. You just heard him say this, and I've seen this too. Gavin Newsom himself allocated some $250 million, it was either last year or the year before, to give to illegal aliens. That is taxpayer dollars of your money, my money as well, that went to giving illegal aliens free health care, which they already get when they enter an emergency room in the state of California, which is probably why the cost for everything in California, insurance, health care, are skyrocketing right now. Why? Because you have a group of people that are not paying into the system, yet utilizing the resources. Isn't it amazing how that works? You have people in the state that are buying housing, that are voting for Democrats, and you're left with absolutely nothing, folks. That's how the state of California runs. It's absolutely appalling to me. And I think it should be appalling to each and every one of us to hear these things. They don't care about you. They care about what's taking place to get themselves reelected, to better themselves. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thank you for being here as always. Please share the show when you can. Make sure you're staying prepped with food, water, medicine, fuel, money. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, God bless.